Hey guys, welcome to Littleblackbook 91. Listen, we're giving you guys a debrief. Yes, a debrief. You guys always ask me for the debrief, so I'm going to give you the debrief. A debrief after the Alan interview. Listen, I think it actually was a really great interview from my perspective, from somebody who observes, who takes in information. I think it was a very interesting interview because there was things that needed to be seen and things that needed to be understood. Okay. And I really want to be able to throw some caution to the wind in terms of when I do these debriefs. It's really about being able to make the audience understand something, but also as well help ourselves grow and become better as well as individuals. So if you haven't watched the interview, then unfortunately you'll probably maybe have to watch the replay of this particular debrief. But I think what was so interesting about this interview and why I believe it was a success is because, like I always tell you, you don't have to the interview doesn't have to go all the way, right? We are trying to observe the behaviors on this channel. It's always about what? Observing the behaviors. Okay, so when we do these interviews, and it maybe doesn't go exactly the way that we plan it to go, or we wanted to get more extraction and more information, would have been beautiful if we got that, right? But we actually got a lot of information. And actually, as I was listening to him, I was really smiling because I was like, damn, I'm seeing a lot of information on this situation right now. And, I think it was intriguing to be able to be a part of that process and be able to observe while at the same time be present in this particular interview. I want to first say this. I appreciate I appreciate Alan's frankness and courage to come on here, because it ain't easy to come on live and share your heart and share what you've been through. Number two, as a man, to be embarrassed, to be betrayed, to be hurt on national television, ain't no joke. That's not easy to go through. You know what I'm saying too, and that can be very difficult to experience and re-experience again after as well. Okay, so let me start by saying this. Let me start by dropping a story to you guys. Some years back, and you guys probably might know this if you follow me long enough. If you know the story. Some years back, I had a situation with a girlfriend. Okay, and foolishly, on my part, and I must take accountability, we went on a break. And I said to the girl, listen, it doesn't matter. Like, I said, listen, I'll hold out, I'll wait for you, you know what I'm saying to you, whatever happens, da 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 da. Do you know what I'm saying to you? Yeah. And I said that, and in the end, you know, I said, listen, if you're gonna move on, no worries, just tell me, and then I'll move on. You know what I mean? And in the midst of that, over 12 months, yeah, old girl didn't tell me that she was moving on, but she moved on. Okay, all right, she moved on, and I felt dragged because I was dragged through, right? Because when I would ask her, like, have you moved on? No, I haven't moved on. I'm still here. Just da, 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 da. But she hadn't moved on ever. But she had moved on, right? And the reason why I'm mentioning this story is because there's a part of it which I really understand in terms of the exposure and feeling a feeling of betrayal that goes beyond just you and the person knowing. So amongst that situation, obviously other people knew that she had moved on. I did not know. And when I came to, but I had an inkling because my spirit was picking it up. I was dreaming, I was seeing things, but I said, no, let me not just jump at it, right? But I felt there was something not quite right, like Alan did, day two kind of thing, right? But because I wanted that relationship so bad, because I was defined by that relationship, because I was also a very nice guy. I want to be very frank and very clear. I was a very nice guy. I didn't even realize it at the time until after. I was a very nice guy. I've told you about some of the foolishness I was doing. Okay, all right. And unfortunately, what then happened in the midst of it was when the person had moved on and was with somebody else, and it's exposed. People knew, but I didn't know. So now I started looking at everybody around me like, so you knew and you didn't tell me? You knew you didn't tell me? You knew you didn't tell me? Right? The betrayal was very painful. I even went back though. So I had a different situation. I even went back. I went back, and try to work it out with the person. Okay. And in the midst of me trying to work it out with the person, I was begging. Without begging, without saying the word begging, I was begging. Because it got to a point where I said, you need to choose between this situation and me. And the person chose a situation, and I was trying to beg them to come back to me. You know what I mean? It was a very low point in my life, right? But I take that lesson as not an L, but as a lesson to be able to understand. Oh wow, I know what betrayal feels like when people know and you don't know. But I also know what it feels like to hang on to a relationship that isn't serving you and that isn't giving you what you actually need, and how painful that can be. But I also, thirdly, also understand boundaries. Boundaries. Because no matter how much I talk about her behavior, I always come back and say, what was I doing? What was I doing? And a lot of things that I did within that relationship were very nice guy tendencies. I also too can do avoidance. I also too had issues within a relationship. But after the relationship, I was still holding on. So there was things that I was doing that were not healthy for me. And it was painful. So I say that all to say that being nice has its advantages, but has major flaws that come with it, right? And that you do get to a place where you want to defend and cover people, right? And a lot of times when I'm coaching clients, I talk about this with them, right? With clients will come and they'll tell me a story, and they'll tell me about their family or whatever, and they'll tell you about, my family's this, and I'll be like, okay, so how do we get to a point where you are? And then when you finally get them to really talk the truth, they're like, yeah, okay, well, this is what actually really happened. And it's like people do this thing where they want to cover people because they don't want to feel like they're doing bad by telling the truth. But that also tells me that when you don't want to tell the truth about what happened to you, you are staying in a prison. And if you feel like you're going to hurt them by telling your truth, then you're not actually being truthful. Because the truth is, this is what they did. Do you know what I'm saying to you? The truth is, this is what they did. Now, maybe he's become friends with them and doesn't want to upset you don't want to upset the balance. I get it. Listen, I really do get it if you don't want to upset the balance. Here's my thing. Your truth is your truth. And your truth, you are allowed to tell the truth. If they start telling you they don't want you to tell the truth, they can ask you and you can respectfully say yes or no. But if you're saying that because you want to be a protector of the person, then you're not actually protecting you. And that's the biggest part too. Because a lot of times when you don't speak about what inflicted you, it becomes a prison. You get locked in. Like you're like, I don't want to talk about that part of it. But those 2 months on the show is part of his life. It's part of his life. So you almost can't just move past it. Like, and you know what I mean. So that's why I'm saying, and I'm saying it so we can learn, right? So I'm doing this like almost like if I was coaching someone. Okay, all right. I'm doing this as if I'm coaching someone. The moment you begin to express how you feel, and listen, maybe he doesn't want to tell the world. Maybe he doesn't want to expose this to the world. So that's fine. Okay, maybe you want to expose this privately. That's fine. But the moment you begin to speak about this, and it doesn't mean you have to speak to the whole world, but the moment you start speaking about this, is the moment you're free. That's why the Bible says the truth will set you free. Speaking what's on your heart sets you free. It removes the weight that a lot of us feel, which is the weight is because of the silence, right? Now, let me tell you this now. Like I said, I've been betrayed before. I know the pain of being betrayed. I know the pain and how difficult it is to really talk about because there's shame, there is embarrassment, there's guilt. You know what I'm saying to you? And those are very powerful emotions when someone betrays you, especially as a man as well. Like People might laugh at you. People might, jeer at you. They might make comments about you as a man. And I get it. That's why it can become very difficult. But the reality of the situation is, when you get to, okay, for me personally, um, when clients come in and they're dealing with certain issues, oftentimes you are probably the first person the client has told this information to. And you can tell because I've said this before, when someone is acquainted with their story, they're able to shorten the story. They might be a little bit emotional still, but they're able to shorten the story. They're able to, um, you know, they're able to rendition the story in a way that, if, for instance, I don't want to be disrespectful. Yeah, I've learned, I've told a story enough to know how to prime the story in a particular way that doesn't have to necessarily disrespect people. you know so I get it. I definitely understand that perspective, especially when it's so raw and still real. And of course, you don't want to mess up your current relationship. That can also be a fear too, of not wanting to mess up your current relationship, as well. But listen, I for me, I was looking, I was like, it does feel like this thing is still hurting you, and that's okay. No, listen. They say it can take up to 18 to 24 months to heal from a heartbreak like this. To heal from being betrayed, it can take up from 18 to 24 months. So when I got betrayed, I went to do research. I went to learn how to heal, how to forgive. I went to learn all this. I went to watch a lot of videos in that time, right? And let me tell you something. My situation, the person was still when we came back together, the person was still lying to me. Like they were continually lying. So I know what betrayal looks like, and I know how it feels like when a person's consistently still betraying you. And you're like, you don't have to betray me like this. You know what I mean? You don't have to keep betraying me like this. Like, why do you keep doing it? Like, I've given you the option to be free and tell the truth. But the reality of the situation, they did what they did because that's how they felt. But I also know how it feels. So when I'm telling you that I know how it feels to be betrayed, I get it. You know what I'm saying to you? I also know how I had to tackle it. I had to go through it. I can't go around it. I had to go through it, because if I don't, it takes longer. You know, if I don't, it takes that much longer. Um, and it that much further along the line, right? Um, so I empathize with uh with um with Alan. It is not easy. It is not easy. And I get it. Sometimes people might think that if you're talking too much, maybe you're doing too much. But I think, I think when you're balanced and you got to your center, you talk about it and it's like, yeah, it happens. The same way I'm talking about it now. Like, what I'm saying to you, like the way I talk about it now is like, hey, this thing happened. Like, this thing happened. It happened to me. Like, I was betrayed. The person hurt me, but I was not perfect. I can look at my parts as well where I didn't necessarily be the best of my ability in the relationship. There are going to be complaints that she's going to have because I wasn't perfect. Like, what I'm saying to you? If anything, sometimes I even take some accountability. Like, I can see why she even did what she did. You know? So, um, yeah, no, it's not easy. It's tough. You know what I mean? Um, you know, I get it. Um, so yeah, that was it. So for me personally, it was actually a really good interview because it was another opportunity to really observe a behavior and observe how people handle certain situations. So for me, I actually enjoyed it. I really did, and I don't mean that enjoy like on his behalf, but I enjoyed it in the sense of an observation. It's like seeing it and also observing myself, because when he did say that was he didn't really want to go there, my old self would have been like, oh, what do we do now? How do we go around this point? But as soon as he said that, I said, okay, well, I want to make sure I'm hearing you correctly. All right, look, let's make sure that you're comfortable. This is your truth. Like, you don't have to even go and talk crazy. Just remember, um just remember that this situation is your truth. It's your view. You can drive it however you want to drive it. You are in control. I'm not going to control the bus here. I'm just offering the platform, and I think that's what it was. I think that's what it was too. But it's not easy. Like I said, this is like we're doing interviews live. You know what I'm saying, Chu? Like Easton said, it's right. It's live. We're doing it live, and it's not easy. People have different points of view. You're seeing different points of views. It's not easy. You know, it's not easy at all. So, um, yeah, I definitely, I felt for him in some instance, and also was like, okay, well, listen, these are things that we face, right? Like we go through this stuff, and it's not easy to deal with the pain of having to, you know, the pain of having to deal with rethinking it through. The girlfriend shouldn't have been in the same room. Yeah, I mean, maybe that also affected him. Maybe that also affected him. In that aspect. So I get that perspective as well. Like like what I mean. I'm not mad at it, bro. Like what I'm saying to you. Um, I'm not mad at it. I think these things they happen, man. They happen. You got to be okay with it. You know what I mean? All right, let me see. Okay, I see you, Sean. Yeah. Yeah, Sean.
Yeah, I think it was an interesting interview. Um, I had said this behind the scenes in our group chat that in the beginning, I thought, I saw him kind of opening up and talking a little bit about his background, and I thought that okay, this is gonna go swimmingly in that he's gonna share, he's gonna be open to all the questions, and you know, but then it just came to like a screeching halt along the way there, and I've seen people do this so many times on your channel. I just know it. I see the shift. When he started
Yeah,
asking you what's your background, are you a psychologist, like what did you study? I knew it. I said okay.
it's
and you
coming.
are and I think at this point you are such an expert at handling that because as soon as it's like it's I swear, as soon as they say it, it's like before you could almost think it's a compliment, but it never is. It's a
Yeah, I get you.
diversionary tactic and a winding road to not wanting to answer your questions. So, and hey, at that what I said to myself was, you know what? He has every right to not want to go down this path if he doesn't want
Mm-hmm.
to. And sometimes we have to respect that. And I think it just
Yep.
taught me what I learned in that moment was we have to respect when people do boundaries. But
Yep.
what I can't respect is when someone deflects and they don't tell you their boundary. They try to trick you around, and out talk you and circle the drain. You know what I mean? Like, just tell me what your boundary is. He did a little nice nastiness with the compliments and the stuff, but eventually he got to it in terms of, I just don't want to talk about it. And I think there comes a point where we just have to respect that, especially
Mm.
knowing what he went through so very publicly on the platform of Lifetime. It was very embarrassing. That was worse than when Chris got left by Alyssa at the altar, or the
Uh,
not Chris, whoever. When
yeah.
that guy got left at the altar, and then when Chris got done dirty by Alyssa too. This was even worse because she cheated on him very publicly and with somebody that he knew in the
Mm.
cast. So we gotta respect it.
Mm. I already hear that. Easton.
First and foremost, I definitely want to give you your kudos for not only landing some really powerful and big interviews, but how you conducted them. So I want to give you all your flowers, brother, because it's a long time coming. You've been more than deserving, and Alan's was a really good interview. And as everybody knows, I've been extremely critical of Alan, so I'm not going to lean so much into that today. But I hope that when Kojo was kind of laying it out, because you also kind of prepared the table, so it took the listeners on a journey of who Alan was, how did he get here, and although he didn't want the area that he deflected from and had boundaries around was, I guess, was a wound that he didn't want to kind of like work into. I think it gave the listeners an opportunity to see how do men or people like Alan, who are at the core and foundation really good, really solid people, um, end up in a cycle like this, and how sometimes like how you start off affects you definitely down the road. I know that Alan has a lot of fans in the chat, and I'm not here to like say anything or make anybody not think he's good, because I think he's honestly a good guy. I'm hearing about his story. It's almost a canon event. Like, a lot of nice guys are good guys, but there comes a point where, like, an inflection where it saw what I saw with Alan was, I don't know. I hope that he's continually doing the work, and I think he's doing the work, because I don't want him for this to happen to him again. Because it's if you don't do the work, and I think it's just as detrimental as for men. If we don't do the work when a wound like this happens, it just festers and it grows and it becomes something that pours into other areas of our life. So, we can get it more into it, but I think you did a really good job of laying it out for the listeners to kind of understand a little bit more into it as well.
Appreciate it. Sid,
Hey, gentlemen, how are you?
what's goody?
Hey, Sid.
Hey, I appreciate it. I appreciate the kumbaya in the background. I do appreciate it. But for me, if you don't remember it, why are we here? Why did we agree to talk if we're not going to talk? Why are we going to debrief if we're not going to speak about it? I understand boundaries. And I think because he may not know how to still speak without speaking directly, may be the limitation. So I will give that. But for me, it's the when you're coming into, and I have spoken, I have done interviews apart from YouTube, and the thing is that you have to also let your parameters be known ahead of time. So like every interview, we're learning who these people are. And for Alan, I learned Alan didn't state his boundary before the interview. And if I got a hard stop, I'm going to let my interviewer know, because that also affects their flow. That affects how the interview, if Kojo knows there is a deadline, Kojo knows how to flow. And not telling him that is doing him a disservice. Is doing yourself a disservice, because if he's looked at Kojo and looked at everything Kojo has done, Kojo is not a gotcha moment interviewer. He wants you to present your best self. He wants you to explain anything you think is misunderstood, because we know production slices, dices, and chops it up. So my thing with this is that I wish he had the boundaries ahead of time. I wish he had full disclosure to his interview ahead of time. I wish all of that was right there out in the open, so he could show us his best self. I didn't like the amnesia. I'm not sure I believe it, but I'm going to give it. He say he don't remember. He don't remember. But in other interviews, he's more vocal than here. So again, it's like, I really wanted to root totally for Alan. I've been rooting for Alan. I've been telling y'all, keep off of his broccoli stuff. We've been windmilling for Alan in several times until the crash out. So I'm like, Alan, just say how you felt. How you felt. That's what Kojo was trying to get to. How did you feel? How do you feel now? What have you learned and grown to now? But if you're saying you don't remember, how do you assess your growth? So yes, flowers to you, Kojo. Again, wonderful interview. Wonderful interview. I learned a lot. And I have to say, I have pulled back a little with my, support of Alan. Just a teeny bit. I understand him. But my full support, I've been pulled back a little bit.
Well, listen, Nick. I think for me, I think everything. Like I said, we are talking about. We said a couple of weeks ago we're going to focus on behaviors, right? So this is what we're. This is why I really liked the interview. It didn't go the way we what we hoped for to able to get all the information. So I think it was just a case of, like I said, I can understand. I think if I'm looking at it from a perspective of there's a lot of pain there. You know what I mean? And I think anybody watching that, if you're in a similar situation, you just got to make sure you look at it from that perspective too. Is like, will I be in the same situation where if I haven't dealt with the pain, um, in dealing with it, and maybe also someone just said like he was on 80s one, and maybe he spoke a bit too much. Maybe someone told him to pull it back. You know what I mean? Like, and I know that he wanted to honor because he said to me from time ago he wanted to interview me. So maybe he felt like he had to honor the fact that he said that to me. You know what I'm saying? And I respect that. I'm not gonna be. I respect the fact that he wanted to honor his word in that respect. I would have taken anything against it if he didn't want to interview, because I would also understand that too. You know what I'm saying too? But maybe, like I said, maybe that's played a part in influencing him in terms of maybe speaking about it. Because I think personally, this situation with like Madison, there's nowhere to run, because you have to go through it in order so it doesn't come off bitter. The reason why it comes off bitter, the reason why it will come off more bitter, and I'm not saying it has, but I'm saying why it will come off more bitter is because there's no balance. It's because we haven't gone through it to be able to gain the perspective where we are more grounded. You know what I'm saying to you? Like, if I was to talk about the betrayal that I experienced within the first few months, I probably would have sounded bitter too. You know what I mean? I'd have been like, this raggedy ass, you know what I mean? Da, 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 da. Um so uh so this situation, I can totally kind of dig it. I get it, um yeah, so I think that aspect. But let me let other people talk, because I think it'd be good to hear your kind of perspectives. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, Sean.
Yeah, I guess just in watching your interviews through the years, um, I just look at it as like, what can I learn that I didn't learn from each person respectively? And it's not only in what they answer, but it's in what they don't answer, from my POV. And I think it taught me a little bit that he still has some unhealed wounds. And I think that and we hear this from like certain reality people, and the shows that they're on. Some of them have a certain level of PTSD, um, and they're getting real-time live feedback on their interactions, and then it impacts them. So in my head, I'm like, oh, maybe he saw some feedback from the interviews, the previous ones that he's done up to this point. The only one I've seen was when he did it with Michelle on AD's podcast. So I don't know, but I do know it was telling that there was just certain places that he just did not want to go to. And I think he kind of used his girlfriend as a shield to say, hey, listen, I don't want to get into that. And I think sometimes people do that. Like, they'll say, hey, I've moved on, and I don't want to disrespect my current relationship by continuing to talk about my old relationship. But if there's pain, if there's still unresolved issues, or if you are reliving it, something that happened a year and a half ago, and this is what's unique, which is why I leaned into a little more empathy with him, because most of us, like, when we go through something, we go through it, we process it at our own pace, and we get to move on when we're ready to move on. These people, they're now having to relitigate this all over again, something that happened some time ago. And they've moved on in some respects, but then starting to talk about it again puts you right back in that same situation. So you might have a level of PTSD, especially if you had some real trauma, which I think for him it was trauma because, hey, he went into this process liking somebody, wanting to be married, throwing his all into it, the best that he could, and then getting rejected, and not just rejected, but then getting cheated on, and then having to deal with people that he was in close proximity playing a role in that. People blaming him for the mistakes that somebody else made, So I just felt like this is his way to deal with it, it might not be what I would choose or what I would want. I would want to see a little bit more growth from him, or I would want to see him being more vocal about, hey, listen, it really did bother me that Michelle did this. It hurt my feelings. I'm over it today. But yeah, hindsight looking back, I think it was really, I think it was dishonest of her. I think it was hurtful of her to do that in that way, and then and then come back and lie to me. And then also for somebody that I was cool with to, be playing a role in this in terms of David. Like, that's what I would have wanted for him. But, I can't want my thing for somebody else, and to do it very publicly, I think that takes a lot of courage. And something that I think you have to be willing to give it. And I don't think he just was.
I think about it in two wounds, in two separate occasions. I think the original, or um, he has a history with people he's dating being, cheating and infidelity. So I think of it as an aspect of two different things. First, obviously Madison and David are bad for that. They are wrong. Nobody's giving them a pass. They're wrong. And so there's an initial wound that the betrayal of somebody that you care for. And as much as he doesn't want to admit, I do think he was falling for, or at least glamorizing and pedestalizing her enough to where he was feeling heavy levels of infatuation. And then also he wounded his own self because he betrayed his own self. He knew where she stood with him, or where he stood with her. He knew, like he said, from the second day. And so I think that's also an even greater wound, because you're having to look at like, dang, I knew when I grabbed her, she would tense up. I knew when she was making all these egregious statements that she didn't like me. I knew from the wedding, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm not trying to paint this thing out, but when we discuss Alan's, I guess, him being a little bit more apprehensive to Kojo's question, their line of questions, I think a lot of the wounds and a lot of the hurt comes from him knowing that he may have inflicted himself. And every man has to look at themselves in the mirror and do that. That's how you have to, that's how you get over this. Not only just the therapy, but you have to take that accountability and be like, I was just as, I was just as involved in this fiasco as the other two people who perpetuated this to me and who did this to me. And so I resonate with Alan. I think that there's going to be a lot of guys who are going to be in his shoes who can resonate as like a Disney child, or watching Disney movies and glamorizing love. And again, I just hope that he does the work, because it doesn't matter how much things he fixes or builds, what he has, until he heals that inner child, or the person that's yearning for love and acceptance. And even the fact that he was considering himself weird, like, no, brother, you just have an eclectic taste. I want him to heal and get that confidence up about himself, because you shouldn't know. You're made how you were supposed to be made, and you have your own hobbies and eclectic things that you might find fancy in. And if they don't like it, hey, it is what it is. But yeah, I'll just land the plane there. But I'm hoping the best for Alan.
Yeah, and you ladies and gents have made some really great points as well. I think the PTSD of having to watch it from the show all over again is a massive thing. It cannot be underestimated. Seeing yourself on the screen being humiliated again cannot be ever underestimated. It takes a level of resilience to have to really look at the situation all over again and look at and feel that pain all over again, And again, it's a shame, it's the embarrassment. Those feelings are real. Okay? They're real. So I don't want to diminish the fact that that is a weighty experience to have to go through. But I think you guys have made some excellent points. And again, this is why we do the background stuff first. It's imperative to know, because a present wound usually meets a past wound, and that's what exasperates the feeling, because one of the and it reminds me, and I'm not saying he is, but I'm saying it reminds me of why men go to Red Pill. And the reason why they go to Red Pill is because they haven't figured it out yet. So they go to Red Pill because it actually speaks to the pain that they have, but actually doesn't, and then they get given solutions that aren't necessarily the best of solutions when you don't apply context, right? So it feeds the narrative of the pain that you have, but doesn't actually feed the solutions that you actually need. So let me give an example of what I'm saying in this instance, right? So Alan, unfortunately, was cheated upon in the past relationships, but before that, cheating does something to you. They say cheating does something to you psychologically. It removes, it steals, sorry, let me say this, it steals a shining light from you, right? When you've been betrayed like this, it makes you question you and your value and your worth. But the reality is, people that often have been cheated on, if you have come from a particular background as a child where you were overlooked, not seen, not heard, pushed to the side, you were second consideration, like any of those kind of wounds, when you get cheated on, it exasperates that feeling. And so again, you're reliving that trauma all over again. The difficulty with that is if you don't learn the reason why these things are happening. For instance, the parent thing, you can't change that. So what's happening is that there is a continual trauma being relived of, I can't control this actually happening. Now, when any of us go through this as a child, you can't control it. You were a child. You actually can't. It's not your fault. You can't change that. And this is what we deal with in coaching. So what happens is people learn to grow to try and control their adulthood in particular ways as a self-defense mechanism to what they could not control as a child. But imagine like you've been discarded, left, or you've been pushed aside, and then you get into a relationship and the same thing happens, because being cheated on feels like you've been discarded, pushed aside, not wanted, not needed, and you get those feelings all over again. So he goes through that in a relationship, and then comes out and then goes and married at first sight, thinking to himself, maybe it'll be different. You know what? These experts are choosing people. They choose people, and he still finds a situation that he's exactly been in when he's in the world. That will mash you up when you don't know the reason why this is happening. And here's my biggest takeaway from watching it. Boundaries. Boundaries, 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 boundaries. If you self-abandon yourself, if you notice, he mentioned 3 key things. He said he changed his clothing, Invisalign, right? He said he's happy to change those things, which is fine, by the way. I'm not going to say that. I'm not saying it's a problem, by the way. I'm not saying it's a problem. I know I was saying there's no problem with that. If you want to grow to improve yourself, there's nothing wrong with that per se. It is the mindset behind it. That's what I'm talking about. It's not necessarily the actual action, it's the mindset behind those changes. He was making those changes to keep the person, not as an improvement. And that's where the key differentiation makes a difference. And the reason why is because of the trauma you faced. That fear of abandonment is now the motivation as to why you're making those changes. If I get listen, some of you ladies, thank God, they love me even with the busted up teeth. I can't even lie to you. Okay, all right. I'm joking about it. It's being real. You know what I'm saying to you? Yes, I had. Yes, I was still looking at me, but the bottom row wasn't looking too cute. Listen, so
it ain't in teeth. They upset that you ain't wearing the button down shirts. Okay.
Probably more than likely. You know what I mean? I think, but the motivation again wasn't to keep somebody. Did you see what I'm saying too? Like, it wasn't to keep somebody. It wasn't so that I can keep them close to me. I wasn't afraid of the abandonment. I did it because I said, I want to look better. I'm looking at it going, you know what? I look at it and I go, I don't like what I'm looking at. You know what I'm saying, Chu? So this is for me to improve. But when we improve to keep people, this is where we often self-abandon and we abandon our needs. Let me let someone else jump in and add to the conversation as well.
I do agree. It's the why he was doing it. And, for me, you can improve, you can change. And as he said, it was cosmetic changes. And, for me, it's the in and out remembrance. You remember how many inches you lost that week, that first week you go into the gym, but we don't remember certain things. But that also is a trauma response. I can give you that. But if your person that the expert says, it doesn't like cosmetic reasons about you, I would just take it as the person doesn't want to learn who the inner me, because they're already blocking that, they're already blocking who I am based on an outward appearance. So I guess in the confident me, it's, well, that's your loss. Keep it pushing. But I can understand how someone can internalize this if this is part of a childhood wound that is still there. And one thing I kept on hearing, remember Alan was discussing previously the court battle his family had and how he felt like it took away from his sister's childhood. So in all of that, I'm hearing so much weight he's carrying. And, I'm hoping that he does find the therapy he needs to kind of lift it, because even through this interview, he it felt heavy. It felt like he's still carrying a lot of weight. And the thing is, I know he probably was expecting us to ask about the crash out, but if I can't remember it, you can't ask me about it. And that's what I was disappointed in. But I understand what you were saying, Kojo.
I'm glad that he, well, I'm not glad that he watches and listens, because I think that the areas where we have the most pushback were the areas that he didn't remember the most. So like the crash out, a little bit more of the nuances between himself and Madison. But I think this also highlights the division, and Kojo, you kind of talked about it a little bit earlier about like red pill, and on the opposite end, you have a nice guy and they might go down the red pill after a canon event like infidelity strikes them. And so then they're like, I hate all women, they're the worst, yada, yada, yada. But you also have some guys who continue to go down the path that they've always gone down, and it just gets progressively worse because they never really healed any of the wounds that have set in the reasons. Not saying you are the reason why somebody cheats, but I think it speaks to why are you attracting so many people that are going to be infidelists to you, if that is even a word, but who are going to do this to you. One, two, a lot of the chat didn't get in the time, and this season really opened up, maybe in terms of my communication style, maybe not going as super hard, but I do realize that I wasn't too far off with Alan when with some of the traits. I think he was doing himself a disservice, because those nice guys don't tend to like lean into their wants and needs. You start to see them start to kind of equate, if I do this, this, and this, then I should get this desired effect. And that's why I was always saying, for him, it seemed like if I get my teeth done, if I do X, Y, and Z, I will be able to, the doors of the church house should be open to Madison, and it never ended up being that way. And so I hope you all saw this within the interview, like how sometimes his mentality kind of was like, well, if I do this, this, and this, it should equate this. And that's how I won't say pedestalize, but you quantify, and I won't say objectify, but you definitely have expectations on the ends of those actions that you do for that person.
Did you want to add, Sean? Did you want to add?
The only thing that I would add differently, or that I thought about too, because it popped up in the chat, is that and you and I were talking about this, trying to figure out how I want to frame it. But I think what often happens, and I don't necessarily think I saw this with, I took this away from Alan, but I think other people watching can take it away. And again, that's what I saw in the chat from a guy that was responding. It was like, there are guys who are quirky, there are guys that are nice, but a lot of women don't like those kind of guys. And I think that leaning into that red pill kind of ideology, it's the little things. Because some people think red pill is overt, and it's not. It's very little subtle things that men embrace as ideology, and then they go extreme with it. Like the 80-20 rule. Like 80% of women want 20% of the men. So men are thinking like, oh, if I do all these things, then I should get women. And then when I get rejected, that means there's something wrong with all women. But then as men, we forget the women that want us. because we focus and hyperfixate on the women that we want that reject us versus focusing on the women that actually do like us and do want us. And I think we all as men can just, if we like took a step back and realize, wow, there's always women around us that like us, romantically. But those are not the women that we want. We want to chase the stretch goal. And then when we get rejected by those women, we back into it reasons as to why we got rejected versus looking at who are we going after? What are the things that we possibly could improve on in ourselves? But we want to blame women or we want to blame the other person. So, I kind of think like that's the part that we just don't want to look at stories like this and say nice guys don't be nice, don't be a nice guy. No, you should be nice. It's good to be nice. It's good to be kind. But reciprocity is important. Having boundaries, like you said, is important, because sometimes people will hear a message and they'll gravitate onto the part that feels good to them because it's like, yeah, I was being so nice, but I didn't get what I want, so now I shouldn't be nice anymore. No, you should be nice. You should be kind to the right person, and with boundaries attached to that.
It seems, Coach, you need to bring back a couple of your videos about, dating in your market, knowing your market.
Absolutely.
Mention that
You
weight
have,
class.
right, you certainly did an entire series a while back about, being realistic about where you fit in the market. And, though, you were given someone of a different market share, you certainly can still navigate this. But, we all are a little, how can I say it? We all have stuff that we're dealing with. It's just a matter of how we deal with it and whether we wish to talk about it in public or with our friends. But certainly, he said he's doing therapy. I'm hoping, that time is what it will take for him to heal. But I have to say, it was a great interview with the constraints, but I was very disappointed that, it was kind of like the emergency brake was on and we didn't even know it was engaged. And that kind of, pulled me back. But I have a hard stop in 9 minutes. Okay, just letting you know.
I said you gonna you are
She
something
generally
else.
does.
You are not gonna let up on your parameters of being forthright about time. I think the other thing too I want to quickly add is the I don't think Michelle Madison rather, sorry, is better than him. I don't think that at all. Um, I think Madison sought someone on her own level, and sorry, no disrespect to her, but I think like her and David are on the same level. They operate on the same frequency. I'm not necessarily talking about aesthetically or superficially. And when you see them in interviews, when we see them on the show, they vibrate together. And I think that's the thing where people can be like, they're rooting for them, they're happy. Yeah, because she found somebody that's at her level, that operates in the same way that she's comfortable operating. They both were very comfortable in cheating. They both were very comfortable living in that space of not telling a full truth and seeing where the cards laid out. Where somebody like Alan was like, as much as it would have hurt my feelings, I would have rather you told me than find out after the fact and be even more embarrassed. So I think people need to find people that operate in their same level and always, not just physically, but also that think alike to a certain degree, and that where you can work together with that person. Some people don't like to be challenged. So they're not going to want to meet with somebody that's going to challenge their way of thinking or challenge their perspective. Some people don't mind it, so then they can work off of somebody who pushes them a little bit. Some people are very comfortable being right at a very safe place, whatever that looks like to them. So I do think what I hope was a learning was that don't necessarily chase somebody that's not on your level, and that you put them on this pedestal, similar to what Easton was saying. Like, you put Madison on this pedestal, but she really wasn't on your level. You guys don't operate in the same fashion. When she saw the way he lived and saw his aspects, the way he approached life, it didn't impress her. It didn't impress her enough to say, "Oh, I see value in him," because they're not things that she saw valuable. So there's no need for him to do a massive makeover for her or make these changes for her, because it wasn't anything that she didn't value him as a person.
Kojo, I thought you were going to bring out the story when he said his friends were the wild kind and he was the one who wanted to speak to the ladies. I remember your stories. You had one of them stories, but you conversing in the club. I was waiting for that story to come out because there are a lot of new people.
That's another story. That's another story. I'm giving them story times. They should know. Yes, Lisa, do you want to add to anything?
Real quick, I know that the TikTok streets are definitely talking about Black men's education and the enrollment in college. And I wanted to draw a parallel. I hope that we can use the moments like this to see how, early childhood development rolls into later development. And I would implore people, if you see young men in your neighborhood, if you have a son or anything like that, help getting him involved with good mentors, mentees. Giving a good, healthy affirmation from a masculine presence is rather important, because I could tell maybe I won't say it wasn't that from Alan. Maybe I'm overstepping or anything like that, but to me, it seems like a lot of confidence from men are really instilled by their fathers or a father figure or something like that. And to me, it seemed like he's chasing this like white buffalo that'll never be that until he gets that level of approval, it will always be something that he's kind of yearning for. And I just want that. I kind of related that in a weird runabout way, but I want us to kind of think about affirming maybe our young men or people in our lives a lot sooner, because down the road it shows and it impacts them. And we want people to be whole, healthy people. And so I think that having a good affirmation early on goes a long way.
Yeah, I mean, listen, look, I think again, like I said, the difficulty of these situations is, I think for me personally, I think like helping. I think obviously on my Dark Arts podcast, I'll talk more about this kind of stuff, and I'll be doing more videos on it as well to try and help men. But the problem we have is like understanding women is easy, but also very difficult, right? Because again, people don't realize that their backgrounds are impacting them in the patterns that they serve. For instance, when I say anybody can get cheated on, right? But but why do you get cheated on all the time? Like we said this with Rose. I said this with Rose. I'm very consistent with this. I say it's both about men and women. I said this about Ready to Love. I said, Rose, why does Rose keep getting cheated on? It's because you are abandoning yourself. So you're going to meet people that are also going to betray you. Since you betray you, they're going to betray you. You know what I mean? And when people don't start realizing the patterns they have, that doesn't mean that you're going to be perfect. That doesn't mean you're not going to meet someone who could betray you. Of course, someone could end up betraying you. But if you have a pattern of people betraying you, then this reason being is because you choose people that are betrayers, because there's something about them that invites you. And this is the stuff that we deal with in coaching a lot of times, about people taking accountability for their actions and what situations they fall into, whether you're a man or a woman. And I had a conversation on last night, Sean was there, and I had this conversation with some of the ladies. I was like, you got to take accountability for your life. Like no one else can take accountability for your life. Like stop talking about the opposite sex. It's annoying because it doesn't change your situation. Like I can sit here and be like, one of my exes was betraying me, and women are just like this. And I had to look at myself and say, well, first and foremost, there were red flags, and I ignored them. Then also during the course of the relationship, I wasn't that great either. I had a lot of avoidance. I did things in the relationship that weren't best. Putting that relationship at its best and healthiest position. You know what I'm saying? Too. So What was I expecting? You know what I mean? Like you flouting laws and thinking that you're gonna get away with it. If you keep breaking the law will eventually will come back after you. This is what happens, and there are laws when it comes to how we deal with women and to deal with men. And so it's like, listen, I feel for Alan. I want him to understand. Listen, this is not meant to be a bash thing. It's meant to be an understanding that, look, when we're looking at a situation, we're looking at behaviors, and I want him to, from my perspective, he may have. Let me say that he may have done, but from my perspective, and I think watching it, I want him to start going through it, not around it anymore, because when you are in a place where you're better placed to heal from something, the way you talk about it is just so different. It just rolls off your back because it's not a big deal. And it's not to say that I'm not downplaying Madison what she did. In fact, I'm actually hyping up to say, take your time with it. The betrayal was national, global. You know what I'm saying, Chu? This ain't no normal. This is a betrayal of a highest order. You've not been betrayed in your local hood. This is that when you turn the corner, you don't know if I'm looking at you because I'm looking at you because I know you got cheated on. Like that level of trauma ain't the same as what I'm talking about. You know what I'm saying, Chu? So I definitely understand that. As well. So, I think this goes back to what we did kind of say in the season. This is why the crash out was a little bit annoying for me. And it's funny because I think shout out to Alan. I didn't care about the drinking and driving thing. I honestly, personally, it wasn't where I was going. I'm gonna be honest with you. I had no qualms with going there first and foremost because it can get techie, it can get legal, and I don't need you to go there. I'm more about relationships. I was never going there. But see, this is what happens when you're trying to anticipate because you're trying to see where I'm going to go, or maybe you feel when the healing hasn't taken place, he ran to the drinking aspect, and I was never asking about the drink. I was never going to ask about drinking and driving. It was never on my radar. I did not care. It was nothing that I thought of. I didn't even, because we barely addressed it even with us on the panel. We barely addressed it. We talked about it for a week and we left it as it was, right? Didn't think it was a big issue. The bigger issue was a crash out. You know what I mean? But even that one, I would have left it alone because, again, I can understand that might be a little bit touchy. I might have asked it. If you have put a boundary there, I'd have moved past it really, really quickly. My main thing was, what about your viewpoint towards Madison, the things that she did? How did you feel about it? How did you work through it? How did you see it? All I want to know was, what is your viewpoint? I don't want you to tarnish her. I want you to tell the truth of what you felt. How you felt can be offensive, but that's your feelings. You can't shut that off. You know what I'm saying to you? So yeah, it's just that. I just want that any man who's watching that, I want you to pay attention to this, because for any man who's watching this and any man who's silent in the chat, maybe you don't talk much in this, I don't want you to be silent. If you be silent, you will crash out, and the crash out will be very severe, to the point we are now talking about you on the news. We don't need men silent. I don't care if you talk to your boys. I don't care if you go to a therapist. You cannot be silent, because the moment you're silent, I promise you, it will eat you up. There's a silent voice in you that will keep talking in the back of your head saying, are you an idiot? Are you a fool? Are you this? And eventually it stalks you to the point where you're going to crash out. What helped me when I was in that situation, I started talking to my boys. And listen, one day I told a group of young men about the story of what happened to me. They laughed at me so hard, but I laughed too, because I said, you're right, it was stupid. When I decided to take that girl back and say to her, choose me or that other guy, and she chose him, and I said, oh no, come on, come back to me, I was an idiot. And I can laugh with them because really and truly I had done the work. I'd gone through it. So I wasn't going around it. So when they started laughing, I said, you know what? It is funny, because I don't lie to you. If it was me, I'd definitely be laughing. And I didn't feel no way about it, because I also understood as well, I'm not in that place no more. I've grown, I've matured, I've moved from there. I'm never making that same mistake again. So I'm not about to beg no gal. You know what I'm saying to you? But then I would have. And I think that's what's needed for any man out there. Please don't suffer in silence. Grab a therapist, grab someone, a friend, talk about it, tell them your feelings, let them know how you feel. You know what I mean? Any other thoughts, guys? I know, Elsie, you got to go in a second because.
Yeah, I gotta go. I got it on pause on the other screen. Very well said. Very well said, Kojo. It's kind of like a soda bottle. The trauma has you shaking up, shaking up, shaking up until eventually you can suppress it no more, and it just overflows. And it's the overflow. In everything we're trying to say is to protect folks, to help them protect themselves, more importantly than others. But just speak to someone that you trust, speak to someone, have that emotional outburst with someone that can hold your hand through this, because that is the best option, to just let it out. Talk to someone who it's safe to talk to in your mind. And, I got here because, when my son used to go into school, that was the one thing. He had to have a trusted person that he could go to when things are just getting overwhelming. It is imperative for all of us to have that person or persons so that we don't let it all overspill and stain everything around us. But thank you for having me.
Boys, any more words of wisdom for the man them?
I don't have much. I don't have much outside of just it's okay to take your lumps. With Alan, his lumps were things that he had to deal with in his past, but also on national TV. That's basic. Like, we're over here psychoanalyzing him, and so I do give him big kudos to even hop on a platform. And if he's been listening, which we know he has, I know personally I've said some things that could come off as a bit aggressive, and so I do apologize. I just want to kind of highlight some areas where I think I've had to work on. And so everybody, we might find somebody on a season of a show that we resonate with, and I resonate with Alan quite a bit because I know how you might feel being a nice or quote unquote good guy, and how some of those tactics are used for your own gains, and sometimes it's not necessarily rooted in being as good or nice as what you think you are. But I have huge optimism for Alan. I hope that he does the work in time and doesn't jump into another relationship, or he's already in another relationship, but takes the time to make sure that the people are there for the right reasons, that he's not over committing himself and doing things in such a grandiose way to garner attention or the affection of another. Just take it slow, take it steady, and then let the cards fall as they may. You can always dust yourself off and try again. And so that's what I want you to do, and much love.
First, I want to say, Easton, that is dope of you to to give that acknowledgement and extend that to Alan. I think that's awesome, and I hope he heard that. Because that was dope. I'll also say and use as my final comments, and quote a great lyricist, musician, and entertainer named Usher, and it's, "You don't have to call, and it's, situations will arise in our lives, but you got to be smart about it. Celebrations with the guys I sacrificed because I knew you couldn't sleep without it. Meanwhile, I loved you. You were my girl. You see, I thought the world of you, but you're so steady still leaving, baby. You don't have to call. It's okay, girl, because I'm going to be all right tonight." And I think that we have to understand and resonate with the place that it's going to be okay. Relationships are going to end, situations are going to come up, but how we handle it, how we're smart about it, how we smartly deal with those situations are the best determining factor. And then we need to move on and close the chapter. So, my thoughts.
And that's how we're going to end the show. So you don't have to call at all, indeedy. A good ending, especially as Usher is out here putting cherries in people's mouths in London. And, I need him to chill a little bit, okay? But listen, yes, audience, thank you so much for joining us for the debrief. I will let you know if we've got any more interviews lined up. I'm trying to get a few more in the bag as well, so we'll see what happens. But I want to shout out to Alan for coming through, because he said he was going to come through from the day dot, like the very first person from early, you know what I mean, regardless of what happens. I want to appreciate him for that as well, and honor him for that as well, going forward as well. But listen, we look forward to the next round of interviews. We will definitely hopefully break down some more for you guys as well. Of course, you guys are watching Never Ever Mets now as well. I'm probably going to do some edits in the background. I'm feeling to go live on TikTok at this point because I done caused some carnage yesterday. I might have to cause. No, I'm not going to cause any more carnage. It's late. But you know, we we appreciate you guys. I think we're doing Never Mets. We're gonna do Never Mets tomorrow. I think we're gonna do it. So if it's on tonight, I think it's tomorrow we're doing it then. So we'll definitely try and jump back on. I need to do my Pop Balloon review, but I was sick, so I didn't do it. So maybe I'll do that in the afternoon on Saturday for you guys. But okay, so there was a super chat and I haven't read it. The super chat was Alan falls in love too hard and too quickly. He's bound to get hurt again and again. I wish him the best, Gene D. Yes, I definitely hear that. Miss Bay Thang. I appreciate you for joining the membership as well. It's good to have new members on board as well. We appreciate you. And so, audience, again, once more, we'll see you again very, very soon. And shout out to those who have been reaching out to me for the coaching as well, especially those of you who are booking 5 coaching sessions in advance. It's been very, very good. We're going a good long way. So I've got a few more spots still open. So if you're looking for coaching, reach out to me. We want to be able to help serve you, grow, transform, and heal as well. Okay, there's a link in the description box. We are looking forward to seeing you in 2025. All right, appreciate you guys. Still loaded. We'll see you again soon. Much love. Little Black Book. You know what time it is.